All right, well, I want to welcome everyone to What is Different with LEED version 4.1 for single family homes. This course is brought to you by the Green Home Institute. The Green Home Institute is a nonprofit with a mission to empower people to make healthier and more sustainable choices in the renovation and construction of the places we live. And today I will be not just your moderator, but I will be the speaker. My name's Brett Little, and I am the program manager here. Real quick before we get started, our session is approved for multiple continuing education units, including LEED accredited professional in homes, as well as all 5 pillars of our green for our certified green home professional, and AIA health, welfare, and safety, which may make it applicable to your state-based design or contractor license. I wanted to give a huge shout out to our members at Mandalay Homes. They hit the top spot for best average HERS rating of 21, which is lowest. And I sent a link in the chat there for you all to go check it out and see who they're competing against for that spot. But it's really amazing. It helps them get to LEED certification and do a lot. And, you know, you can become a member and do amazing things, and we will help tell your story. So many members doing so many great things. We'll also send you this mug sponsored by TrueTech Tools, our board member, Bill Spohn. It's made out of corn. We've got a few of them left. We got your name on it. So sign up. You'll get instant access to all of our events. Anything, discounts on paid trainings and all that. There's a link for that for you, so you can check that out. And before we get started, a huge thanks to our top tier sponsor, Rheem. Introducing the all new, or not so new anymore, Rheem Proterra, an energy efficient, quiet, and all electric hybrid heat pump water heater. The future of water heating is finally here. They've got it available from 40 all the way up to 80 gallons, and they've got a new commercial system coming online. These things can help dehumidify and cool spaces in the summer, and they do this by pulling in air through the top that has heat in it, believe it or not. It enters an intake port, passes through our 410A refrigerant, heats a compressor, heat's transferred to the tank, and then condensate is routed away from the unit. So it's just using the air. And it's got all these special efficiency features all the way up to 4 on the scale, comparing it to standard electric and even gas. It's much more energy efficient, much less carbon intensive. You've got different settings. You've got a 10-year tank and parts warranty, leak detection, and connection with automated home systems. I personally use a lot of this. It's got that built-in Wi-Fi technology. It detects if there's a leak happening and will let you know. The energy use tracking is phenomenal. I've been using it to figure out how much energy I'm using in comparison to the rest of my house. And then the operation mode schedule. This one's pretty cool. If you can imagine, if we're trying to shift our energy off of peak when it's more carbon intense and expensive, I use this too from 2 to 7 o'clock. My system doesn't fire up. And that's the peak time when I have to pay more and there's more carbon intensity. So we know we can use these types of systems in some of these new utility pilot programs to almost act as a battery. Like this is like a battery system. They can be installed ducted or duct free. They can be strung together in multifamily units. And stay tuned, it's not out yet, 120 volt system. You don't have to do the expensive electrical upgrade, especially in older homes. That's going to be coming soon. So check it all out at rheem.com and learn more about their Proterra today. And then thanks to our second tier sponsor, Rockwell is going to be giving you more sustainable spun mineral wool rigid rock that is permeable to from a water standpoint, allowing that water to move. It's going to insulate the whole home from the top to the bottom. Under the slab, they have the product there to help you out. This is really cool. They just launched this. They're doing a training for builders, and you might want to check it out. It's free to get into it. They're going to help you understand how and why to do this. And they're doing a sweepstakes on that same page I sent you there to win some Rockwell. I don't know what you do, how you win it, but you can check that out as well. All right, well, let's get into it. What is different with LEED version 4.1 for single family homes? Before we get into it, I want to talk about more than what this course is. I want to be clear on what this course is not. And this course is not a technical training. We don't have time to get into all the things we're going to talk about from a technical know-how standpoint. And so from that perspective, what we have for you is the first link in our resource page there is a session we did called the Basics of Residential Green Building. It's a 7-part series. I'm dropping it in there in the chat too, but that's bullet point 1 in your resource handout. And that's going to take you through all the technical details of everything in LEED and green and every program, anything you need to know. And then it's going to give you references to learn even more about certain things that you're interested in. So we don't have time to explain the technical details of everything today. We will answer some questions, but there's going to be a lot. If you're not familiar with it, you might want to go learn more. The same goes for LEED for homes in general. We don't have time to get into everything to do with the LEED version 4 for home certification program. It's just so much. And so we're just going to scratch the surface at things that are specific for single family homes that are very different from the multifamily program. And again, resource link 2. I just posted it there in the chat. It's number 2. That's where you're going to take a 4-hour deep dive into everything to do with LEED for homes and expand upon all the different things, both for single family, multifamily, and mid-rise. And then finally, this isn't a Green Raider training, but if our Green Raiders are here, we welcome you. I think you can learn something. I think you can share something that I can learn. So we do have a formal LEED Green Raider training. And even if you're not becoming a Green Raider, I think it kind of takes you behind the scenes to kind of peek at what the Green Raiders are looking for. And that helps. We sometimes have architects and builders go through this so they know what they need to be doing, what the Raiders are going to be looking for, how to be successful. You can check that out. I put a link in there. That's resource link number 3 as well. So that's what the course isn't. But I also want to celebrate something. 16,000 LEED living units that we have been involved in since our providership started as one of the original LEED for Homes providers at the time, serving the Midwest and parts of Canada, and now serving the globe as a LEED for Homes provider. 16,000 units, single family, multi-family units, you name it, we have been involved in. And you know, I've been involved in at least a majority of these, but this is even before my time. So it's really quite remarkable how much of an impact we've had across the sector under our providership, and excited to share that with you. So what is this course? What is it that we are going to be talking about today? So again, we're trying to focus on the very specific things that allow the LEED for Homes version 4.1 program to stand out, and why it makes sense for single family homes, why it's different than the multifamily program, and why we think it should apply to the multifamily program, and what we can do to help move forward. So at the top, we know we're going to score better in V4.1 than we are in V4. You're just going to do a lot better. And then on the top right there, you can see ventilation. There's some really key things you need to know about ventilation that is tripping a lot of people up. So I'm going to explain it to you now, and I'll probably explain it to you again in the design meeting, because I know you'll forget. And then rehabs. Very important that LEED now makes more sense, not the most sense, but more sense for existing homes. Some updates on water leak detections for single family homes, updates on keeping our homes cozy and healthy and warm and comfortable, and how that's different in V4.1 versus version 4. And then some updates on landscaping and water requirements, and how there are some more prescriptive pathways to be able to get involved in that. And then if there's time, I'm going to bring up briefly LEED Zero, because we all want to get to net zero today. How do you verify it? How do you identify it? And how does LEED do that? And how can we do it with single family homes? So what kind of projects are eligible? Mixed use, high rise? Nope. Mid-rise multifamily? Nope. Low-rise multifamily? Yeah, not really. I probably should have crossed it out. You can do 4 units. You can do 4, 2 up, 2 down, or 4 flats, like you see in, like, I don't know, Chicago, 3 flats, 4 flats. I actually lived in one in Grand Rapids. It was hard to believe, but there were 4 flats. You wouldn't notice it looking at the house. But anyway, very rare for GR. So that's what it can impact, up to 4 units. Anything beyond that, you're going to need to get a special exception from GBCI, which we think you should get. But so far, they've turned most of those down, unfortunately. So anyway, single family production, definitely. That's what this was made for. Single family attached row housing, yes, you can do all these single family attached all the way across you want. It's just when you start stacking, that's when it becomes concerning. Now, gut renovations and especially additions and remodels, they do have some special workarounds and set-asides, especially even down to the addition, remodel, and weatherization side. So we're going to get into what that means and what you need to do, but it can work. And we are getting more gut rehabs, especially now under this program. So when it comes to ventilation, we have the indoor environmental quality, or IEQ section. And so what I really want to highlight in this section at first is the EQ prerequisite ventilation. And so if you want to follow along with me on that, I believe it is handout item number 4 that you can do that with. Before I even get to that, we're going to be referencing on handout item number 4, we're going to be referencing several things on both checklists. So we have a Dropbox link here that has basically all the LEED for Homes resources you could ever want, and we keep it updated. So you can bookmark that. That's item number 4 in the resource list, and I dropped that in there for you. But then also, we're going to be referencing here real shortly 62.2 2010 and 62.2 2016 for ventilation and how they work. So I'm dropping in the direct links to those for you. That's bullet point item 5 and 6. So let's look at Ashrae 62.2 2010. And for those of you who don't speak in those jargon terms, which forgive me, you're probably like, what is he saying? Basically, we're just talking about ventilating and keeping homes healthy and air flowing and keeping people, especially these days, safe in their homes with air quality. So that's what we're talking about. And there's different ways to measure that and define that. And so Ashrae has come out with ways to measure it. And every year they change it. It's building science. It improves things. We learn new things. Nothing wrong with that. So version 4 of LEED, this is going to throw you off, right? If you're coming in from 2008 or even version 4 to version 4.1, this is your first barrier you got to get past, in my opinion. If you can't get past this one, then throttle back to version 4 and just give up because this is going to be a big barrier. And the earlier on in the project we get your attention, the better off you're going to be. So you can see here somewhere between 30 to 90 CFM on this chart going across the top, number of bedrooms going down the bottom, square footage, and there's European metrics in that link if you want to see it too. And so you can see we kind of find homes typically on this range between 30 and 90, which is why I have those circled. And so again, you are sizing your ventilation systems to meet this threshold. Now, this is the simplified chart. It gets more complicated when you do intermittent and all that, but it's just keeping it simple. You're looking at between 30 to 90 CFM, depending on how big the home is and how many bedrooms there are. So that's, relatively small. And we would argue definitely not enough ventilation to keep people healthy these days. And I can prove that, just based on my own data I've been doing on my house. So what LEED has done is they've hitched their wagon under V4.1 to 62.2 2016. So again, look at the numbers I'm circling here. 60, 180. It's basically a double, 30, 90, 60, 180. It doubles your ventilation requirements. So this is going to throw you off guard because I already know what you have spec'd. I sat on enough design meetings to already know what you're doing. And you'll be like, I don't have the budget for this. I didn't know this was coming. We're already building the house. They're installing it tomorrow. It's too late, right? I get it. So that's why I'm trying to catch you off on the early. So one of the reasons this becomes a problem is you can see here in the pre-drywall stage, your green raters should be coming through and they should be looking at your duct install. And what they're going to be finding is things like this, right? Where everything's all crazy. Look at the photo I have down there at the bottom left. It's all crazy, right? It's not going to get enough ventilation flow. So maybe you did do the right thing, right? Maybe you did get ready for 2016. You did your you did it right. You installed a ventilation system to get to 6180. You did the right thing. But then the HVAC comes in and gets all crazy here with, the snake kind of thing going on. So the rater, hopefully they're a good rater. They're going to tell you in the pre-drywall stage, hey, this isn't going to cut it. That HVAC needs to fix it. And right, this is what we want to see on the plans, right? We want to see a straight line. And I know the plans they're just 2D, so you can't tell. But on the plans, we can already tell that if there's a straight line, you're headed in the right direction, right? Just a straight line from the vent fan to out. That's a good step in the right direction. Now, if it goes up, like in this case, we would have never seen that on the plans, but that's part of the conversation you need to have with your heating and cooling contractor. So on item number in your resource handout, item number 7, we've got this open source tool that we like to use, and your HERS rater and your energy rater might have their own tools that they like to use, and we don't want to step on anyone's toes. We're just letting you know you can use this yourself. So I dropped the link in there. So basically I put in some numbers, like we've got the Grand Rapids climate zone, 2,000 square feet. We've got, they say number of occupants. Basically, when you see that, you should always know number of occupants are bedrooms plus 1. Don't be like, oh, I'm selling a home to a client who's going to have 7 kids. No. Now that could be useful later on, but that's not the way we rate them in these systems. So bedrooms plus, and then here you can see we need under LEED V4.1, 135 CFM. Under 2000 on V4 2010, we need 75. It's a huge difference. So what do we normally get? We got 2 bath fans running at 40 CFM. That's what we usually see. Or we got 1 ERV in there cranking out at around 80 CFM. Now it's the bathroom fans are supposed to be at 50, but because the HVAC went in there and snaked their way up, it didn't hit it, right? It happens every project it happens. It just does. So anyway, you kind of get this reduction here. And so you've got a tight home, right? You built a super tight home, your builder's on it, right? 100 CFM, 0.6 air changes, 1 air changes per hour. You got it, right? A lot of you guys are good at this. And then that's going to mean you need a required ventilation rate of 95 CFM. But you're only hitting 80 because, again, either your fans are undersized or you've got the snake stuff going on, or a little bit of both. I mean, we see both going on. So here's what your savior might be, but you won't know this until the final construction phase, right? So there's something called the infiltration credit. So basically you get rewarded for building a worse off, leakier home. It's a little frustrating, but we've found this to be a savior on some projects that we've recently worked on, and I won't name any names. So all the inputs remain the same, the one I just showed you in that tool if you're using it. You've got the bath fans running at 40 CFM, you got an 80 CFM, but now let's say the home got built leakier for whatever reason. It just wasn't built as well, 600 CFM. Now, if you're using that tool I showed you, which again, we don't have time to go through, we'll do that in another webinar, but you'll see that your ventilation rate now using the 2016 infiltration credit is only 78. So you lucked out because your home was built less tight, but obviously you want to build a tight home. So what I would recommend is going into it is you assume you're building a tight home, you interview the builder, say, what are your numbers that you're usually getting? You go from there. And so that would be, what we recommend doing. And, at that point, you assume you're going to have a tighter home, but then you upsize appropriately to hit these standards. And then you make sure your heating and cooling contractors are aware that they need to do straight over or straight up installation. So yeah, we got a little technical on this one, but that's a big problem we run into that will, make or break V4.1. All right, so let's repeat after me, and I want you to type it into the chat so I know that you get it, because I can't tell you how many design meetings I'm sitting in and I have to keep saying this, and I'm going to keep saying it, and I don't know how many more times I have to say it, but I'm going to let you know that you get more points in LEED V4.1. Just type it into the chat, please. I don't know how I have to communicate this, but I sit in so many design meetings with people who pre-designed for V4, and maybe some of you are here, and I'm not going to call you out, but and then we're like, you know, they're like, well, we did all this work on V4, and I just can't switch to V4.1. I'm just so afraid. But I'm here to tell you that you're getting, if anything, a whole level jump, if not 5 to 7 more points at the bare minimum. You just get more for what you're doing in a single family setting. Like, I don't know what else to say. So for those of you who are consulting, those of you who are raters, we just have to keep drilling this into everybody's head to get away from V4 and to shift to V4.1. From a point standpoint, it's going to work a lot better. It's usually a whole level jump. Now, this ventilation issue, I get it. That's a problem. And that might be the deal breaker. But I can tell you it's going to be healthier for your clients to go that direction. All right. So where are those points? So Brett, where are those more points coming from? You know, prove it to me. Okay. So on the top here, we have a snapshot of the V4 checklist. And on the bottom, we have a snapshot of the V4.1. And it's important to know that V4.1 is still in beta pilot, meaning it's not codified yet. So it's not a real program, though people are using it, hundreds and hundreds of thousands. But it could change. It will change. But I've been told, and I trust USGBC, that the changes will be very slight once it's codified someday, hopefully by the end of this year. So anyway, right now you can see here already, boom, you get an additional 7 points to just go from V4 to V4.1. So it's a huge jump, and all you're doing is the same thing in energy efficiency. You're not doing anything different. It's the same HERS rating. It's the same modeling. You just get more points. That's where the bulk of those more points are. And then second, on the bottom left, you get rewarded for proper refrigerant management. And I'll tell you what that, and I'll unpack that for you here in a second. It's probably something you're already doing, and you basically just get it. So that's already a ton of points there for you. And then you can just see here in general, energy, you know, people want to be comfortable. They want to save their utility bills. So energy has a huge, you know, it gets 2 more additional points in general out of the total points compared to V4. So the other thing that you should know is that the prescriptive pathway is eliminated in V4.1. It doesn't exist. And even in V4, don't be fooled. You can use the prescriptive pathway to gain points, but you still have to do a HERS rating. You still have to pay for the HERS rating. You still have to have the HERS provider come out. There may be few exceptions where the prescriptive pathway rewards you more. And I think it's a useful tool to go through on your own if you don't have a HERS rater hired yet. I think it's a beneficial thing to look at, but it's not anything, we don't ever see anybody submit under it anymore. So it's gone. Okay, so there might have been some links I forgot to mention that I was referencing here in the resource handout, and this is one I wanted to definitely give you. But you know, you first probably want to know more about the HERS index rating. So I dropped that in there for you on number 8. If you're not familiar with how the HERS index rating works, you should definitely check out this session that we did with REMRE, and we'll be doing more of them as well. Or sorry, with ResNet, should I clarify. But basically, this is an example of a report, a really good report. A HERS index of 2. It's just 2 points away from being net zero, which is pretty exciting. And it just kind of shows you all the energy usage and all that, as well. And so, you know, pretty interesting stuff on here on how efficient, you know, these homes can be, and how we can get to net zero, and how this, you know, contributes to your LEED score. But more importantly, the LEED energy budget is a way that we're validating homes for energy efficiency. And it's an alternative way to get more points, especially when the homes are all electric, and especially when the homes have solar. They tend to fare a lot better in the LEED energy budget pathway. And especially under V4.1, we do find that to be quite more frequent. So make sure that your energy rater that you're working with is pulling both reports in the design stage. In the final submission stage, we need a LEED energy budget and a HERS rating, but have them check the budget in the final submission stage too. Now, the other thing I wanted to reference, and I think I forgot to put the link in the resource page, but it's all up there on USGBC's website, was the refrigerant management. And so again, just repeat after me, R410 A-OK, right? So yes, R410A is not really the greatest anymore, right? We need to move towards using CO2 as our refrigerants if we want to stymie massive global warming potential and leakage. I get it, but this is what LEED's going to give you a point for. So you can use R410A, you can get a refrigerant management point, and sure, why don't you lobby LEED to upgrade their standard? Maybe you fall on the other side of that and you're like, hey, this makes it easy. Wherever you might be, I'm just presenting you with the facts that you can snag a point for using what you probably already use anyway, because there's not much else. And if you're using something better than R410A, and there's a whole list they have, then you can snag some points. If you're not putting air conditioning in, I would say, what are you doing? Because things are going to get really hot. I hope you wouldn't do that to somebody. But if you're not, for whatever reason, or you're relying on them to use a window, you also get this point, because then there is no refrigerant to manage. So it's an also giveaway as well. So that's just an easy giveaway point that most teams forget about. All right, now moving on to water, and the first thing you should know on water is that we've got some changes in the amount of points. So on the top we have V4.1, so there's 3 additional points for saving water, which is helpful. And then there are some changes to the the total water use in indoor and outdoor water use. And one of the biggest changes to the program is just the water leak pressure testing that needs to be done. So we've created this form here that you can have. It's an open source form. You can steal it if you want, even if you're not working with us. It's something we made that we have people sign. But what's important to know for single family versus multifamily is that you can't rely on the plumber to just complete this form in and of themselves and then report it out. You also have to have the rater, whether it be the HERS rater or the green rater, on site doing either the leak detection test themselves or be monitoring either virtually or in person the plumber doing the line pressure blowout. So ideally you want the plumber depressurizing the line, because that's how you really find issues. But you can just use the other strategy where you're hooking up the pressure gauge and then waiting a half an hour and seeing if the pressure drops. So either way, the rater's got to do it on single family. On multifamily, we can just have the plumber sign a form, something like this, and away you go. So those are some key differences as well. The other thing to know is that you can do a water savings of 20% using the performance pathway for single family. So we go over that, quite a bit in the Understanding LEED for Homes course. But basically, it's just a way of saying, hey, what way do you want to save water? What's important to you and your clients? Is it shower heads? Is it aerators? Is it outdoor? Is it indoor? You can kind of figure out where you want to shift your priorities versus following a prescriptive pathway. And as long as you can hit a 20% savings using their resources, their calculator, then that's your bare minimum. And then it's just points after that. One of the cool things about the prescriptive pathway that you should be aware of is that if you're using in V4, if you have really low flow toilets, which are now just becoming normal, like vacuum assisted 0.8 gallon per flush, for example, you can't get extra points for that in V4 unless you go performance. But if you want to go prescriptive in V4.1 single family, you can snag your points for having your favorite 0.8 gallon per flush toilet. And so if you want to learn a little bit more about that, we're just seeing more and more of our LEED developers do this, even in areas where you wouldn't think water conservation would be important, like Michigan. It is very important here, but you don't think it's as much around here. So you can check that out and go and learn more. And we actually go over the performance calculator in depth for water savings within that session too. So the other thing that they did for water is that they did the efficient irrigation prescriptive pathway. So under V4, you have to you can't get any points for having a good irrigation system. You have to use the EPA water sense in the performance path. And again, I want to be clear, I recommend the performance path over prescriptive in all cases, but I understand you're busy, you just want to check some boxes. So in this case, they give you some very clear guidelines. If you are using irrigation, how to do it, what you need to be hitting. And as long as you meet at least two of these different things, you can pick up some points for water savings as well. All right, so moving on to going back to indoor environmental quality, I wanted to hone in on that that ventilation issue because it's just such a problem. But there's so many really awesome opportunities that I really like about IAQ, and I see a lot of people missing it, unfortunately. Some of it's just because they just didn't take the time to look for it or test it. It's probably there, and you just didn't look for it. That's not all of these, but that's certainly some of the things I'm going to be referencing, in these point sections. So again, this is referencing points, not requirements now at this point for the remainder of this section. And I'm going to drop a link here to the LEED and again, this is item number 12 that you can follow along in resource handout, item number 12 on the LEED resource page. But anyway, first, what's important to know is that you can score 2 different points for dehumidifying your house or unit. First, you have whole house dehumidification. In that, I mean, and maybe I worded this wrong, but if you have a recovery ventilator, energy or heat recovery ventilator, or some other type of system that's a whole home ventilation system, if there's a dehumidification built into that, that's specifically for controlling dehumidification, you can snag a point. And then if you have a standalone whole home humidifier, there's also an additional point for that. And usually people just pick one, but you can get it into the ERV or out of the ERV. Now, you might say, well, what about humidification? And I agree with you. I mean, having a dry home is unhealthy. There's evidence that it might make COVID worse or make it more susceptible to catch. We tried to ask USGBC and we were disappointed that they weren't too excited about some of our projects using humidification. But I think we just need to keep pushing as an industry, and I think we'll get it. And there are other alternative programs that do allow humidifying the air as a way to get points. But right now, that's not part of the checklist. Basically, if you have an exhaust fan in a utility room, or an exhaust fan in a laundry room, or an exhaust fan, especially in the garage, like one that either detects bad air quality or when the garage opens, it kicks it out. We don't all have electric cars yet, so we have some nasty emissions from our cars. Make sure that it vents out, and there's some additional points for doing that. This is an easy one. If you have a MERV 10 is not even that great, but if you have MERV 10 filtration, you can snag an extra bonus point. I think there should be points for 13 and 16 because those start filtering, viruses and PM 2.5, and very like with wildfires. But for now, anyway, MERV 8's required, and under V4.1. You can get point for MERV 10. You can't get it under V4. So, and again, all these things I'm talking about are points you cannot get under V4. So that's just to be clear about that. So, If you've got thermostats that are Wi-Fi enabled with cell phone connection so that they can be controlled by the phone when someone's away from home, basically, then there's an additional point for that. It's called remote thermostat control. So again, we're seeing a lot more of this happening. People probably just aren't getting the points for it. So make sure to pick up the point for that. Or if you need an extra point and you're like, what's a cheap way to do it? There's so many thermostats now that can sync up with phones. That's another way to snag that point. So again, this is another easy one. I don't know how many, I mean, raise your hand, or maybe you don't want to out yourself. Well, I will put it the other way. How many of you are already putting in your client's projects 2-stage or 3 or modulating, right? So very important to make sure we right size our heating and cooling, and then making sure that we can hit our heating and cooling loads. Single stages just don't work well anymore. So a 2-stage or gets you 1 point, and a modulating gets you 2 points. And it's not even modulating, actually. It's 2 or more more than 2 stages, but typically that turns into modulating, and not always. But so just making sure you have that built into hopefully your heat pump, or even your furnace is allowed. You can snag some more points that way. And I had a real good time not too long ago with Ed here, just a fun guy. And if you want to learn about all things HVAC testing, which I think is huge, and have your favorite heating and cooling contractor jump on it, I've got a link there in resource handout 13. But there's some extra points for static pressure testing and hitting this target of 0.1 IWC. And so, have your HVAC contractor do that test, because especially as you upsize the MERV filter, you could drag down the static pressure and ruin the life of the system and all that. So it's an extra point for V4.1. And so he talks briefly about it in this. There's all sorts of other great training around that as well, and what that means if your heating and cooling contractor isn't familiar with it. So and then also you get a point automatically for the static pressure if you use radiant, or if you use our favorite ductless mini splits, right? So just by going mini splits solve all sorts of problems that get in the way of lead, duct leakage problems, pan joists, all sorts of problems, right? So ductless mini splits solve so many problems. They create other problems, but they solve mostly problems. So you get this point automatically, and there's a few other points you can get automatically just by going ductless. So check it out. So there's a question on, do they always work better? And yeah, so I mean, it's a obviously you need to have it properly designed. You need to have it in the right application. You need to have the system, the home or unit properly designed. There can be circumstances where you're under conditioning certain rooms if you don't have the correct setup. So it does take some thought, to be sure. You can't just throw it in there. So it's it's not a sort of like instant replacement if there's not additional thought into it. So thanks for having me clarify, Rachel. So materials and resources also plays a role in some of the differences in V4 versus V4.1. And so here is a direct link to that as well for you. And so in this case, we're looking at a couple different things, and a shout out to our member Architectural Resources here, and super cool project that we referenced back in our Net Zero conference that I'm excited to hear more about soon, up at the top there. But look at those beautiful overhangs, right? Look what they're doing. They are keeping water from getting into the windows and the doors and rotting it. So there's bonus points for that on your V4.1 projects. I wanted to ask though, what else, especially in the case of this project, and you can't answer it, Michael, but what else what's the 2-for-1 that these overhangs are playing here, besides just water entry? Right, it's passive solar, right? Keeping getting the sun in in the winter, heating it up, keeping it out in the summer from overheating it. So it's really a 2-for-1, and passive solar can be modeled to some extent in the HERS rating. It's not perfect, but it can be modeled. So it's really a 2-for-1 to do this overhang. And I think it should be done on all projects. So the other thing at the bottom left there, you can see some PEX piping as an example. But cold water lines, keeping cold water lines either out of unconditioned space because it can cause a moisture issue, or insulating the cold water lines up to R4. Now, obviously, PEX has a better R value than copper. It's not much more, but I'm just showing it as an example. Or doing slab on grade so you don't have a basement, all sorts of things. Again, so many people just don't pick this point up. I do the reviews and I'm like, do you have an unconditioned basement? No. Well, you automatically get this then. So, and then also, the V4 program has a really convoluted and complex way of tracking waste diversion that after 7 years of seeing it, still don't understand. It's kind of a performance-based approach where you try to get a baseline home and it doesn't work very well. So they've realized that and they've come up with some workarounds. So in V4.1, what they did is they said, okay, 50% of 3 material streams. So by material stream, they either mean a certain type of material, like in this case, like all the drywall, or they might mean a load of material. So if the whole load, so if you have like 10 loads during the construction build, and just like 3 of those loads is diverted, boom. Little weird too, but I don't see, but anyway, that's the way they do it. And then they do 75% of 4 material streams for an additional point. Now, to be sure, under V4, they allow you to use the V4.1 non-US, non-Canada workaround, which works out a little bit better too. So, but you can get into that in the other training. So, perfect timing on this question that just came up. So, absolutely, yes, gut renovations. And so I want to spend a little bit of time here talking about gut renovations. And I'm going to post item number 15, which is very specific that I'm going to reference here to that as well in your resource handout. But gut renovations, basically, to some extent, the motto of LEED that I think the motto is, or at least my motto is, if it's not broke, don't fix it. To some extent, right? That's basically what now LEED wants you to be better. So there's that, but that's their new approach to gut renovation. So in the old days, and sadly under V4.1, especially for multifamily, you got to really fully gut the whole building out just to be able to do this. But under this new version, that's not so much the case anymore. But there are some barriers. So the first barrier is this, right? You need to fish behind the shower and tub surround and figure out what the heck is going on back there if you don't plan to gut out the shower and tub surround as part of your project. If you do, then probably no problem. But if you don't, then what happens is we just don't know what's behind there, right? And it can't be some kind of paper-faced material that absorbs water and causes mold and mildew. It has to be an ASTM certified substrate that resists water, or nothing, like in the case of the left side. You can just do nothing back there. So if you can, and I was going to go LEED on my own house, and I didn't just want to punch a hole in the wall and fish back there because my bathroom's fine. I just don't know what's back there. And maybe if the home was built recently, you could get the plans and you could verify it that way, but you got to figure it out. So that could be a deal breaker. So that certainly is one concern. The next concern is this. What do you see? What's wrong with both of these pictures? It's the same thing. What's wrong with it? Yes, building cavities being used, right? This is the other deal killer and the other reason I didn't go LEED, because especially when you're not planning to gut out rooms and tear apart rooms, you've got to verify that there are not pan joists behind the drywall. And you got to make sure that it's not wood back there. So now some people have said, well, there's these sealant products that can seal it up and hit the LEED target. And that sounds great. And I think you should submit a credit interpretation request to USGBC about that. I think it's a fair argument. But last I knew, they probably won't accept it. That's just my understanding. But you should ask. I think more people ask, the more they might. So yeah, one thing you can do though, is you can, if you want, we've seen to some extent people put in mini splits, back to the mini splits, and then turn the duct system into an energy recovery ventilator distribution. And in that case, it doesn't matter if it's leaking. Now, it's not a good idea to have it be leaking, and you should still seal it for proper air quality, but it's not, LEED doesn't care about the ventilation system having hard ducting. It's just the conditioning system. So that's one strategy you could employ, short of tearing all the ducts out and rebuilding them all, which is, again, I don't want to diminish the fact that you should never have leaky ducts. It causes mold issues and all air quality issues, but it's expensive to tear all that out. And especially if it's working okay, I didn't do it. It just didn't have enough money. So, and then last, this is especially where if it's not broke, don't fix it kind of comes in. If the home is already in compliance with a HERS index rating of 85, you're good to go. Now, the lower you go down that threshold, the more points you can get, and you're going to need those points. But as long as you're at a HERS index of 85, 70 is where you need to be for new construction, give or take, but 85 is where you need to be for existing. So you can score the home out in the design stage with your raters, see where it's at, and then again, work with them on an iterative design practice to see, where you want to take that home to be better. And then again, following that sort of, if it's not broke, don't fix it model, this is where you might want to employ a home inspector, especially, or a green rater who's comfortable with doing and taking on the liability of doing a water management inspection. So basically, you're looking at the water management checklist. So I shared that with you pretty early, but I shared that with you on item number 13. And basically, we just need to verify if any of those items are having issues, like finding water entry in the basement or the walls or the windows, then those need to be fixed. But if they're not having issues and you can verify that, and like I said, a home inspector is usually in a really good position to do that, then you can just leave it alone. You don't have to tear the whole basement apart, dig up the slab, rip off the exterior siding, reflash all the windows. You don't have to do that if there's no moisture problem, but you have to be able to verify there's not a moisture problem. So there's, a lot of different ways to do that. You do need to make sure you've got the gutters in place and draining away. That's required, or well draining sandy soils is another requirement. So, and then ultimately, Green Star is your best bet for existing housing when you can't do LEED. It just makes more sense to go that way. It's an existing homes program. That's what it's made for. And so we can help you achieve that program instead and achieve your sustainability goals that way, if LEED just doesn't make sense. So. And then real quick, LEED Zero. LEED Zero basically is asking you to get LEED certified as a baseline. And then from there, you need to sort of work your way down a list. Can the project afford PV? Tell us why or why not in a narrative. Can the project do community solar or a power purchase agreement? Tell us why or why not. Okay, then at the bare minimum, we just want you to buy renewable energy credits if you can't do that. So I've got a item number 17 and 18 here. We've got some more resources on that, and a session on both LEED Zero, and then a session with some fantastic resources for renewable energy certificates and combining those in with LEED and what you need to do for that to achieve LEED Zero. So obviously the first thing you want to do is get the lowest HERS index rating that you possibly can. And then from there, buy a little bit of renewable energy credits. And just so you know, too, the renewable energy credits for now have to be bought at the end of the project a year later, based on verifiable utility data. Now, we are working with GBCI to see if there's another approach we can do in the construction stage, because a lot of you just turn projects over to your clients and that's it. So looking into that, but for now, it has to be based on a real year's worth of utility data, and then you offset it. But those HERS models should be pretty accurate, because most HERS raters do a pretty good job of confirming that. So anyway, we're going to get into Q&A now. And before we do, just a real quick reminder, if you're looking for your continuing education units, and you're watching this in the future, not right now, not in the past, not currently, go ahead and take your quiz with an 80% passing rate. You can find that quiz on our Thinkific channel or on the GBCI platform or elsewhere. Take that quiz, get a passing rate. For those of you watching right now today, live here with me, check your spam for certs at gutenbergcerts.com. You're going to hopefully see that in the next day or two, and you will get your CEU certificate as long as you were here for the required 50-minute CEU time. So, and as always, we want to say a huge thanks. We have over 200 members now as of this year. So those of you who are joining us, those who couldn't be here today, thanks to your support. Thanks to our board of directors, our volunteer speakers, our executive director, Jose Reina, and all of our top tier sponsors who are helping you meet and beat LEED V4.1, Mitsubishi Electric for ductless mini splits and ducted systems, Rheem for air source heat pump, water heating, April Air for keeping homes healthy, dehumidification involved, Build Equinox for smarter ventilation, all of our sponsors who, allow us to do what we do. So I want to get to some questions that you might have, or some conversation that you might have, and then we're going to wrap up, and we're going to ask our Mandalay team, and welcome to them for joining us today. They got their whole crew here today, and congrats again to them for being the lowest average HERS rating in 2021. That's very phenomenal. They're going to be hanging out with us after this, so we're going to get to that after the question. But the first question that came in is, as an advocate for sustainable homes, how do you feel about LEED V4.1 increasing points for the same practices included in V4? Would you have preferred to see a raising the bar across most categories? How are you talking about this with your partners and clients? Well, I think that's a really important question. I really appreciate that question. And I think you kind of have, this situation, and I think Energy Star, is certainly a victim of this situation in that, if you increase the requirements too fast, too soon, then everybody jumps ship and disappears, and then doesn't build better, or maybe finds another alternative green program, and that what we would hope they would do. And if you move too slow, you don't make a real tangible impact to solve our most pressing issues of climate change and human health. So it's that balancing act, and that's where Energy Star, appreciate what they had done. I'm going to throw them under the bus because I'm a taxpayer and I pay their bills, so I can kick them and I can give them a good kick to the federal government. That they moved too quickly on Energy Star 3, and they lost a ton of people, and people just didn't come back really. So and since then they've sort of unwound a lot of their things, and so that's just that balancing. And I think LEED did the right thing by listening to their single family building constituents, which they had built up over the years, many of them who are members of ours and we knew, switched from 2008 to V4, and there was just utter and sheer panic, and we lost some people. And part of that had to do with the Energy Star 3 transition too, which just kind of muddied it a little bit. But they recognized there was a problem, and so they engaged the single family home builders and the people in this space, and they listened to them, and I think they came up with something really good. I'm not, raising the bar. I don't want to say that the bar has been lowered. It's just been shifted a little bit, because really what they did is they just gave you more points for things that are more important things like reducing utility bills and reducing water bills and being more healthy. That's really what they did. They shifted the points away from some of the things that are maybe more of interest to the multifamily builder and designer. Though I would argue that V4.1 in and of itself should be the multifamily program, and I'm okay with being publicly recorded on record of that. And I would advocate, if GBCI is out there and listening, that they immediately move to dissolve V4 and move straight to V4.1. And they know I think this, and I will write it up too and put it in a post and send it to them here soon for when they ask for public comment on V4.1, because I think they did such a great job on V4.1, and I think it makes more sense for multifamily personally. So hopefully that answered the question. So are there any other questions for me on LEED? I see a couple more here. This is a consulting question. So James, feel free to email us at another time and we will answer that question or connect you with someone who can help you. But thanks for attending, and I appreciate your time. Danny with Mandalay Homes here. Hey, Danny. Since we have a lot of Mandalay team who are pretty new to LEED, can you give a very basic overview of what LEED is for new single family? And I have a feeling a lot of them are feeling lost right now. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, and as we stated, the Understanding LEED for Homes 4-hour course really is a good starting course for this one. But I understand it's a lot. It's 4 hours. So, what I want to make clear is that, LEED, leadership in energy and environmental design, is a green building certification with what we call the 5 pillars of green. Now they break it out into more categories, but they focus on energy, which is comfort, utility bill savings, carbon emission reduction is where their big focus is. And then human health is right there behind it. A lot of it focuses on air quality, but there's a lot of others, sound quality. And actually, I totally missed that one. So you can actually get an additional point by doing sound quality testing on the house for V4.1, which is important. Sound quality is a part of comfort. And so having heating and cooling systems that are not super loud, or having a well-insulated home next to a highway or busy street, that can cause mental health damage as well as hearing loss later on in life. And so again, more than air quality, and I'm trying to look for my app here to show you all, but you can use an app right in the field with your radar called the NIOSH app. And basically it's measuring my dBAs right now, and you can record that on the NIOSH app, and you can get that sound quality and record it and pick up some points by having, quieter systems. Water conservation, measuring water conservation gets you more points. Having more sustainable materials that are local, that are, made out of bio-based, having, sustainable wood materials, having improved durability in the home, mitigating waste. And then lastly, sustainable sites and locations. So picking up points by having homes that are located in areas that are more walkable, use alternative transportation, have access to parks, are a big feature of LEED. And then making sure that there's not pests entering the home, or that you're building with more sustainable framing materials. So again, you have to kind of go through the rating system, but the whole idea is that it basically gives you a way to verify how sustainable your product is and communicate that out to the market, and go after what points are important to you while meeting some basic prerequisites. And for this session, we were just covering some of those key prerequisites that were different than version 4. But Danny, we're going to hang out after this, so we're going to definitely make sure that I get to those specific focused questions for you and your team for sure. So I'm happy to do that, but it's a good question. So when will V4.1 for California be released? So I don't think they're making a special program for California, um, but um, but there is a workaround for Title 24, and so they give you, I believe they do give you an alternative pathway for scoring points under Title 24. I don't think they're going to produce. Don't quote me on it. I could be wrong because I know you were lucky in the past where you got your own checklist, but I don't think they're going to produce a Title 24 checklist. And I think they just gave a workaround for that. So it's an equivalency to HERS and points. So you have to go into the EA's link on their manual and then look for the Title 24 handout. So yeah. So yeah, from our standpoint, we are a LEED for Homes provider. We're here to help you. We have a fantastic network of LEED green raters all around the country who will come in and help your project from start to finish. And so, I have a link here on how you can sign up with us and connect with one of those LEED green raters who can help you out. And then we come in and we help with pre-construction plan review, make sure you're on the right path. We do LEED AP home services, and then ultimately help make sure your project is successful, certify it. And then we like to tell a story about your project, do some profiles. In the past, we've done video tours. We've gotten you all on some of our webinars. Our past folks come on webinars and talk about their projects and then do more projects. So if we can help you out, you can check out our website, greenhomeinstitute.org, and then you can click on programs, or I've got the link here, greenhomeinstitute.org/LEED for Home. So, we're here to help you get started on a project. So at this time, I don't see any other specific questions, but feel free to email me, brett.little@greenhomeinstitute.org. At this point, we are going to shift gears and head out to connect with one of our teams. But then I think everybody else is dismissed. So I appreciate all of your time. Thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your week, and we will catch you on the next session next week. So take care.
Be sure to check out all of our courses available online that you can watch anytime and anywhere to pick up your CEUs. Before you go, make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube to get weekly updates and stay up to date on green building science courses, webinars, and home tours. Thanks again.